Do you want to know how I made this skater boy animation in Procreate Dreams? Stay to learn more. Animation is a very long and complex process, reason why I can't show each one of its details, but I will show you the most important parts of the process. I started by drawing all the static parts in the animation. The boy with his left leg on the board. I must keep in mind the position and the size of the leg that is supported on the board. Keeping this in mind, I can draw the right leg. On his hip, the base of the leg is going to be lower. Keeping in mind the sizes of the left leg, I'm going to draw the right leg on the lowest position, when it is touching the ground. Dots represent the joints, while the lines represent his bones. A triangle represents his foot. Shape his leg using circles and lines. From the time code, you can access the onion skinning options. You can change the background color or leave it transparent, as well as changing the size, the color, and the opacity of the next and previous frames. One tip, if you leave these colors transparent, you can see the real colors of the picture. In a separate track, I draw some movement arcs. With these arcs, I can define the position of the knee and the ankle. Using simple shapes, I draw the leg so it matches the shape of the static leg. I draw some in-betweenings in between the keyframes, in the parts where I need a smoother movement. I create the propelling movement as well as the return to the initial position. To make sure there is consistency in all the drawing of the leg, I draw the shape of the foot and I copy it in all the positions. I also draw his pants, making sure there is an arc throughout all the movement. I change the reproduction speed to 24 frames per second so I can have a better visualization. I start by doing all the line work in the boy and the skate. Then I do all the coloring using flat colors. I want to clarify that I didn't use any kind of mask for this coloring. I colored everything in just one layer. I create a new track for the shading. I turn it into a clipping mask and I set it to multiply. I also modify the opacity. I create a grayish purple color that I use for shading all the bottom and left surfaces. To make sure the shades are soft, I'm going to soften them using Gaussian blur. I create some shiny areas that I'm going to soften using the smudge tool and Gaussian blur. I start with the line work of the leg in motion. To ensure maximum consistency, I'm going to copy the shoe in every position. And now I do the line work in every position. This is going to be the biggest movement in the animation, and also the fastest. I'm going to move a big distance in just one frame. I'm going to create a movement arc in the leg. I'm going to create kind of a motion blur in the shape of the pendular movement of the leg. For this, I'm going to create reminiscences of these positions in the shape of jagged lines or color spots. I draw repetitive lines to show the movement, or sometimes I simply extend any line as much as possible, even from the initial position, and sometimes even to the next one. I do all the line work for this motion blur effect that I created, and also with a little bit less distortion in the next position. After that, I color every stage of the movement using flat colors. When I color this created motion blur, I will keep in mind all the arcs of the leg movement. All the coloring and smudging will follow these guides. I do all the shading in exactly the same way I did with all the static part. Of course, I have to do this for every stage of the movement. I made the shading in a separate track. In this way, I can copy the shade and paste it in other frames. In this way, I can save some time and unify the process. In this way, I'm going to keep the same shading in the top part, which is the part that moves less. And I can vary the lower part that is going to move the most. And where possibly, this shading won't show too much. Now the legs change to a more horizontal position. That means we have to change the shading. Keep in mind that when we have a change in position, we also have a shading switch. That means all the parts that were lit before now have shading, and vice versa. I'm going to draw the wheel in Procreate for different reasons. First, I can use Procreate tools to create perfect circles. Second is that I can draw everything in different layers. And finally, using the grid option, I can make sure that everything is really well centered. Then I can export this to Procreate Dreams as just one element. In Procreate Dreams, I draw some movement lines and I create a circular movement. Now it's time to draw the background. I will draw the different parts in different layers. So when I move them at different speeds, I create a stereoscopic effect. In different tracks, I draw a sky, a line of grass, a sidewalk for the boy to roll, a faraway city, and some closer objects like trees and houses. Each one will move at different speeds according to its distance. Closer objects will move faster and faraway objects will move slower. To create a movement, I go to the beginning of the sequence, tap on the playhead and select Move and Scale. Then I go to the end of the sequence and look for the Move and Scale keyframe track. Select it and move the object. In this case, I'm going to move the sidewalk all the way to the end because I needed to move fast. For the closer objects, I want them to pass in different moments of the animation. I will use Move and Scale to make them appear, pass, and disappear. They're going to start at the right of the stage, and I will move them to make them disappear all the way in the left. I change all the easings to linear to make all the movement constant and fluid. I create a small movement to the skater, so when he propels, he moves slightly forward, and then comes back to the original position. Finally, I add a shadow under the skateboard. And another one in the exact moment where he lays the foot on the ground. The shadow will move with the skateboard. And this is our final animation. I hope this process was useful for you and that you can use it in your next animations. If you like the video, I invite you to like it, to subscribe, but most importantly, share it with someone who can find this content useful. See you in the next video. Adios.